Hello, I am Steve. Once again, back at it again as the guy who created this channel, and with me is my good friend Kat.
Hiya!
And Kat is a very big help on the channel. As of late, she obviously does the fangirl voices for the Pony Fanboy fangirl videos. And you were here last time for the 400th with Shannon, who sadly couldn't make it tonight. But screw the Oscars. We're going to be doing our own little countdown, our own little award show. But this time we're celebrating the worst of the worst. And celebrate 450 Media Wiz videos. We're going down. I have top 20. Kat has her own little top 10, and we're going to be counting down worst pieces of television, whether it be full-on series or pilots or anything that hit television. And Kat actually has a couple exceptions on her list, and we'll get to her when we go through all these. So I'm going to try and be really fast with mine because, yeah, 20 is a long number. So let's get this on. So number 20 is one that you helped actually with the writing process of. Good old-fashioned Hammerman. Hammerman. I've talked about it at length in my review. Since you helped write this one, or yeah, you helped me take notes for it, Kat, let's talk about Hammerman. What makes it so amazing?
Oh, where to start? The animation, can it even count?
It was the choppiest looking animation ever. Like at first it was like, okay, the background is that like the opening intro, which has a laughably horrible introduction with that terrible rapping, Hammerman, Hammerman. And like you see the backgrounds and it's like, okay, well that doesn't look that great. But like the intro animation was pretty good. And then you see the animation proper. First few seconds, we lost it laughing. It's so amazingly shit.
It makes Hanna-Barbera look like Hayao Miyazaki.
Hell, it makes the Spirit of Christmas, that the South Park test animation pilot, whatever. It makes that look like Hayao Miyazaki.
I believe that the character designs could work if they were animated better, but the bad guy for the episode, the weird clown-looking guy, he looked like a Yu-Gi-Oh monster, Sagi the Dark Clown.
Yeah, what was it? Defacely Marmeister. Yeah, because the first episode, Defeat the Graffiti, or something like that. The episode that I reviewed was the very first one. It was like one of 3 episodes I could find on YouTube. Maybe there's other ones I didn't watch, but I watched at least 3 episodes, and yeah, I reviewed only one. But let's face it, this is all you really need to know about Hammerman. It's a bad Saturday morning, quote unquote, educational show, like in the way of Captain Planet, but it's and Captain Planet was goofy enough as it was, but this one, like the episode's message was basically, don't do graffiti, which feels incredibly like flip floppy because MC Hammer at the beginning when he's doing his green screen prologue says like, now it can be good, but you shouldn't do it. It's like sent a lot of mixed messages there, my friend.
The oddest thing for me was he shows up at the beginning and he shows up at the end and he does the song, but he doesn't actually voice himself on the cartoon, in the cartoon segment.
Yeah, that's the weirdest part of it. It's like, if you're going to make a show about MC Hammer, why not get MC Hammer to do the voice? I'm assuming that the animation budget was so low, they couldn't even get him to do the voicing for the show itself.
Yeah, I don't think he'd want that on his resume.
Oh, man. And like, this is actually a reoccurring thing with some of the other entries on the list, but this is one of those shows where instead of dedicating a whole first episode to explain the backstory, they just wrap it all up in the opening.
And they also have these 2 backup singers that pop up from time to time that don't really do anything. They'll sing and explain everything, explain things, but not really help.
Yeah, that was the weird, and they show up like every scene transition too. It's like, what is the purpose of these characters? Like,
Fan service?
It's like, you have to be one of the most sick freaks in the world to get off the hammer, man. I swear.
It's the internet, man.
You know what? Fair enough. You're right. Oh man, and just God. Oh, the one thing I think we came up with the same joke at the same time. It's at the end when he does the epilogue. He goes like, he's like, yeah, don't spray paint on public property. Do it on some paper. Who knows? You could probably end up doing a great cartoon someday, like Hammerman. And like, I think you and me were just like, well, that's an insult.
Yeah, that would be a punishment.
Oh my God. But yeah, the fact that we laughed so hard at this thing Like, we could not stop laughing at all the stupid, insane crap that's in this. That's why it's so low on the list, because it's bad, but it's entertainingly bad.
At least it was funny.
Exactly. There you go. And same goes for my number 19. I don't know if you're going to agree with this, but number 19 for me is another hilariously bad show, The Boom Crew.
Oh, Lord.
Okay. Shout out to Gus, the nostalgia kid, for helping watch this. We watched at least like 3 or 4 episodes, because you can watch all the episodes that they made for the one season that they planned on YouTube. And basically, I'm not gonna lie, we thought it was so bad it was funny, because it's okay. The main premise, it's a very cliched one. It can be done right if you have some creativity, but the plot of the show, it's about 4 kids that get sucked into a video game world, and they basically have to collect all these cartridges, as they call them, boom carts. And instead of making them look like NES cartridges or something, they look like Commodore 64 floppy disks. So good job, animators. And so they have to do that, as well as fight monsters and bad guys. And of course, there's like some knockoff Darth Vader who wants to take over the galaxy. They have to stop him. And he has 2 bumbling henchmen who are trying to backstab him at some point. It's really stupid. And from what I gather, they only aired like, I don't know, like 3, 4, 5 episodes out of like the 15 or so that they produced. Because I think Kids WB realized, like, oh yeah, this is a failure. We can't air all the first episodes of this.
Yeah, I think the guy that made it had better luck with the Proud Family a couple years later.
Oh, that's the weird thing. He made the Proud Family before this.
Really?
Yeah, the Proud Family came out, what, 2002? This came out 2004. It's like, man, how do you go from Proud Family to this?
Yeah, usually this is something you would have first, like your bad project before working on your good project.
Maybe his first flop was he had to sadly be a part of Bebe's Kids, and then he redeemed himself with Proud Family, and then he slumped with this, and then he eventually got to succeed again when he got to bring back Proud Family.
Yeah, at least that's going well.
Yeah, it's going pretty solid from what I've seen.
Penny's friends still suck.
Penny's friends still suck. Absolutely. God, gotta feel bad for her on that. She has terrible friends. Aside from the cliches, like, it's a very cliche premise. Like, we've seen it before. People end up inside of a video game world. But you know what? Every so often, people take a cliche premise and they can make it fun. As much as people rag on Scooby-Doo and the cyber chase, this is way worse. And I'll tell you why. Because this is loaded with the most out-of-date lingo that was out of date even when they made the show. Like, the way they have characters say things, they try the most wannabe gangsta urban slang, and it is so painful every time they have a character talk. Whoa, gnarly half pike. The one that made me lose it was Tony Hawk It Later, homie. And I was like,
oh
yeah, and I love it at the end, because the first episode, which is the one I reviewed, the very first episode has the kids befriend this French alien who's a coward, and they eventually help him get over his fears and stop the bad guys for the episode. And then he hooks them up with like new technology, and he gives one of the kids this lightsaber looking thing, and the kid's only response is to go, "Oh yeah, bling bling," and I just went, nobody talks like that. And then Gus just lost it laughing. Oh, and they do the stupidest thing, like as an Easter egg, I guess. Half the time they'll have like a Da Boom Crew logo in the background, like on walls and stuff, and we're like, is that supposed to be like cool? Because it's not.
Didn't we learn from Hammerman that graffiti was dumb?
No, see, the Boom Crew, those kids needed to learn from Hammerman that graffiti. Well, then again, MC Hammer also said that sometimes it could be good, so maybe they were taking that with a grain of salt.
A very big grain of salt.
And oh man, again, just like Hammerman, I'm glad you brought that up. The last thing I gotta say is, just like Hammerman, they throw in all the backstory in the opening theme song. Like, and hey, some shows can pull that off. Look at Powerpuff Girls, because it was a very simple premise. Guy creates 3 little girls who have superpowers with specific ingredients and this mysterious chemical that gives them superpowers. All right, super easy to follow. Here, it's one of those first episodes where they have characters talking, but the way they talk makes it sound like you're halfway through the season. Like, there's one part where they stop all these blob monsters by getting the cartridge they need, and it's like they have dialogue back and forth where it's like, man, good thing we got the cartridge when we did. Like, this cartridge turned this entire planet out of whack. What do you mean turned the planet out of whack? our cartridges turned this entire galaxy out of whack. And I'm like Gus even asked me, it's like, is there like a pilot episode that like that we should have watched first? I'm like, no, this is the first episode. I double checked. The first episode just throws you into the action, and it's like some shows can get away with that. This couldn't.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a very good show.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. But you know what? Just like good old Eli, Hero of Tomorrow Stone, said when he reviewed it, it's Drek, but it's absolutely entertainingly bad Drek.
Rock on, Eli.
Okay, so next up, this is so low on the list because as bad as this show is, I actually have a serious amount of respect for the creator, and that is the Brothers Grunt.
Oh, the Ed, Edd n Eddy guy.
Yep, Danny Antonucci. Before he made Ed, Edd n Eddy, he did this show for MTV. You know what? If you know anything about Danny Antonucci, you know that he did Ed, Edd n Eddy solely off of a dare to make a kid's show, and he succeeded.
That is amazing to me.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, if you watch his student film, Lupo the Butcher, which is incredibly violent and depicts a butcher basically keep dismembering himself. He keeps chopping body parts off with his butcher knife. And then you see this show. You can kind of see how it would be kind of tricky for him to move over to, you know, a family-friendly network like Cartoon Network. Because this show, okay, it has a very interesting premise. I give it that. The premise of this show, it's about this underground society of these things that they're humanoid, but they look like zombies. Like they're pale white, they have yellow eyes, yellow teeth, they look unkempt, and they just look like just existing gives them pain. Like they look in physical pain every time you see them. And they live in like the sewer, I think. And the plot of the first episode is that their brother Perry, they're gonna have to shuffle him into being the new leader of their civilization. And Perry doesn't want to do that, so he takes off. So then the at the time leader says, okay, round up a small group of you guys, and you're going to go out and look for your brother out in the crazy human world. And from there, a bunch of disgusting gross outs, like zoom up shots into people's noses, and you see like snot.
Ew.
Yeah, there's lots of really disgusting visuals in this show. And honestly, I think Madball's gross jokes could have learned a thing or two from the Brothers Grunt, because that was trying to be gross and it wasn't. This succeeds 100% at being disgusting.
Probably a good thing I never really heard of this.
And the most jarring thing about this is, and I know why they did this, because back then MTV had this rule that they wouldn't allow shows on their network unless they had music connected to them. So that's why Beavis and Butthead would be interrupted by scenes of them commentating over music videos while sitting on the couch. So that's why they had the music video segments in Beavis and Butthead. Here, they try to do a similar thing where they keep interjecting music videos, and then they'll like interject animations of characters dancing as if like they're in the music video too. It's a really forced way for them to abide by that old rule MTV used to have.
Well, I guess the more you know from back in the day, huh?
Yeah, and eventually MTV nixed that rule, and now they're just doing really crappy reality television. But yeah, like I said, as bad as this show is, and this show went for a pretty long time. This went for like 3 or 4 seasons.
Really?
Yeah, that was really shocking to me. I was like, how did this last that long? But you know what? Like I said, the reason it's so low is because I have respect for Danny Antonucci. And while I don't think this is a very good product from him, I at least give him credit for sticking true to his own artistic visions, as much as I don't like it. At least he absolutely redeemed himself with Ed, Edd n Eddy. That's all I'm going to say.
Seconded.
Okay, so let's see. What's next? Okay, here we go. This was on, I remember a couple of these were on your list last time, and they might be on your list now. I'm not sure. Captain N, the Game Master.
A super cheap video game show.
Back then, as a really cheap way to try and bank off of the success of video games in the 80s, there were a ton of these kind of video game movies and shows. That's why we got the Super Mario Brothers movie, Mortal Kombat movie, Street Fighter movie, a bunch of stuff like that. And we also got TV shows, like we got Super Mario Brothers Super Show, the Sonic, 2 different Sonic shows, both starring Julia White. And then you got this, which was probably the most blatant commercial of them all. I mean, even to the point they introduced a character who was just a sentient Game Boy.
And he sounds like Slimer.
Yeah. And it's not only is this show just one big advert for Nintendo, it's not even a good advert because all the characters feel horribly misrepresented. Like Kid Icarus is just annoying. What does he say? He's like don't worry, Princessicus.
I'll help you, Princessicus.
And Mega Man sounds like a smoker for some reason. Like Mega High. If Kid Icarus trusts you, I trust you.
What they did to poor Simon Belmont.
I was about to say, yeah, Simon Belmont is easily one of the worst represented here. Like you take this, we said this last time, but you take a badass vampire hunter guy and you make him this foppish British like fashionista mountain climber, and he talks like, oh, my whip is going to whoop you. And the princess isn't even like they just made her up. Like they didn't even take any female characters from old Nintendo games and put them in this show.
Yeah, they couldn't get Princess Peach or Zelda. Well, actually, they got Zelda a couple episodes later, but.
Or Samus. They put Samus in a Captain N comic. They couldn't even be bothered to put Samus in an episode when one of the main villains of the show is Mother Brain. And the main character himself, again, mad respect to Matt Hill. Matt Hill's a very talented voice actor, and he seems like a really genuinely sweet guy. But the character himself, Kevin, the main character's name is Kevin, and he gets, just like the Boom Crew, it's about a kid who's an expert video game player getting sucked into a video game world and he has to save it. But here, instead of cheap urban lingo like in the Boom Crew, they just have like a bunch of really generic video game terminology. Like he's just like Goody Two Shoes in a Letterman jacket who shows up and he's just like, oh man, I know all the video game ins and outs that'll help us with today's episode. Like he's such a generic main character.
The weird thing is they didn't get the kid that played him in the live action portion to play him for the show. And when he first goes into the video game world, he turns into a CGI monstrosity.
He turns like the rejected son of Max Headroom. That seems to be a pattern we're running into here a lot. First, Hammerman, they don't have MC Hammer doing his voice, and now you got this where, like, the kid in the intro isn't playing the main character.
I'm just glad the show didn't last long enough to have Pokemon be in there. I don't want to see how they screwed that up.
Yeah, again, this show went on for a pretty long time. This was like 3 seasons.
Oh, that's long for the 80s.
Yeah, right? Man, good old Deke Entertainment. And yeah, sure enough, Deke is actually going to be on this list a couple of times because I've covered more than enough from them. Speaking of which, actually, that leads us to the next spot on the list. Speaking of bad video game titles that came from Deke, Battletoads pilot.
It's like the Eds, but worse.
Yeah, man, like this show tries way too hard to be like Ninja Turtles, and that's not surprising because David Weiss, the guy that wrote it, was actually a writer for the original 80s Ninja Turtles. But like the biggest problem I have, aside from the occasionally mean-spirited undertones, is they were trying so hard to make this the next Ninja Turtles, and they didn't even bother making it have its own identity. And it's like Battletoads had plenty to work with. You had the games, you had the comics, and granted, they tried taking some aspects from that. Like in the comics, you had it that the boys were video game testers, and they tested Battletoads, and then they end up turning into the Toads themselves. You could do something with that, but no, they just turned them into generic catchphrase spewing Ninja Turtles knockoffs with all the bad attempts at lingo. Like you thought the Boom Crew was bad. This has some really bad lingo in it with psychotronic, incredible, cosmorific. Like it is so. It's like, did you know this came out in 1992? Because the lingo is so dated. There's no way you can't tell.
Well, the animation proved that.
Oh yeah, the backgrounds in this are. I would say Hammerman has debatably worse backgrounds, but the backgrounds in this just look like a 14-year-old using 2006 grade MS Paint trying to like replicate an MC Escher drawing.
Sounds about right.
And the mean-spirited undertones. You pointed this out. The principal character is such an asshole, and like his reason, like they introduced the boys as being the principal says you three are the biggest losers in the school, and he's also splitting them up so that way they don't cause trouble. It's like, okay, you split them up because they're causing problems. Okay, fine, whatever. And you know what? You have it that like the kids around school think they're losers and make fun of them. Okay, yeah, it sucks, but that's the thing that happens, especially in a lot of like 90s high school based television. But having the principal straight up say, "Cause you're losers," it's like you said last time, say goodbye to your job, asshole.
Yeah, he would be so fired.
But you know what? I will say the most irritating thing about this whole pilot is Kathleen Barr. That's the other thing. Like the voice cast in this is actually not bad. There's tons of really good voice actors. But Kathleen Barr, for some reason, her character as the villainess, the Dark Queen, she is probably the most irritating part because the way she says certain lines is just great. There's a part near the end where they destroy her base basically, and she decides that she's going to get back at them, and it's like we'll stop those Battletoads when we activate the whip saw, which is just a giant UFO with a saw blade around. And then they defeat them quite easily. Like she has her goons shoot lasers at them, then they jump out of the way, and then they just blow up their own like power source on this UFO thing. The Toads jump out and it explodes. I'm like, these guys work to destroy their own plans. They don't even need the Battletoads to help them with that.
They're kind of dumb.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So I could totally see why this didn't last. And speaking of like going back to the whole lingo thing, the attempts at catchphrases, because they have like two of them. They have Toads Rule, and the catchphrase that they spew whenever they transform between human and Battletoads, their catchphrase they always spew out is "Let's get warty." And it's like, just stop. Like it's like, I'm sorry guys, but it's never gonna be Cowabunga, dude. It's just not.
If you're gonna have a better frog show you want to watch, just watch Amphibia.
But you want to know an even worse pilot that was based on a video game property? That leads us to Bubsy at number 15.
Oh, poor Rob Paulson.
You know what? It makes me feel happy knowing that Rob Paulson openly admitted that he hated doing the character. So I was like, you know what, Rob Paulson, I got to meet you once last year at a convention, and
same here.
You're a really sweet guy, and we did not bring it up to him because I just couldn't find it in my heart to do that.
Yeah, he was just so nice. You don't want to bring up something that crappy to someone you genuinely like.
Instead, we brought up, what was it? I think we brought up the mask to him.
And Darkwing Duck.
Yes, we did. But anyway, Bubsy, like, Battletoads was at least based on a good game. Bubsy was a horrible game with a horrible main character and a horrible pilot. And oh my god, this was genuinely terrible.
The catchphrase was bad, and the way he said it was bad. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, terrible characters. Bubsy is annoying. His niece and nephew are annoying. His sidekick isn't funny. And honestly, I think if there was a likable character in the Bubsy pilot, it would probably be his armadillo sidekick, who has this weird fantasy of being run over by a truck because he's an armadillo, and I guess that happens to them a lot. But like he has like PTSD from it. It's like, what the hell happened to this poor guy?
Does being around Bubsy give you nightmares?
I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case. And the villains, like just like Captain N and the Boom Crew, you have like one singular villain who, instead of just taking out the heroes themselves, send out their two bumbling henchmen, who in this case are a vulture and like a weevil or something. And like they're just the typical dumbass henchmen that constantly screw things up. And it's like, you know what, bad guys, if you want something done, you do it yourself. And that's the other big thing about this. Not only was Bubsy a blatant Sonic knockoff, but this show feels like it's trying way too hard to copy that's the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon. You know, the one that had Robotnik say "snooping as usual." It feels like it's trying to rip off that show, like with the way the backgrounds are drawn, the really fast-paced style of humor. And you know what? People can say what they want about that show. I was not a fan of that Sonic show at all, but this was 10 times more annoying just because of how obnoxious Bubsy and the other cast of characters are.
It just looked ugly to me.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Yeah, this was like, I think, put out specifically by the same studio that made Bubsy, like, and some poor animation company that they roped in to help them with it. And it's like, you know what? I'm glad this didn't go anywhere because, like, maybe they were ambitious, maybe they thought it would go somewhere, but honestly, the fact that Bubsy is a game franchise is already a nightmare enough. We don't need Bubsy stinking up television too.
Exactly.
So yeah, sorry, Rob Paulson. At least you are well known for a variety of fantastic shows, and we can leave this buried underground.
Good call.
But man, the last few entries on the list have been a bunch of bad pilots, and number 14 is no exception. You know what? It's one thing to have a show that's annoying, but it's another to have a show that's obnoxiously preachy and in your face, and that's why number 14 on my list is the Gruvenians.
Oh no.
Bad CG animation. I think I believe that's the first bad CG pilot we have on this list.
I'm pretty sure this is the one that scared Rowdy.
Yeah, and Huey, and actually, yeah, Eli reviewed it too. I think he was more angry at it. I don't think he was terrified of it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, either way, this show has the added bonus of being incredibly preachy and in your face. So much so that I think Kirk Cameron should actually take notes on how to be condescending and preachy from this, because okay, the main gist of this pilot was it was made by Kenny Scharf, who is a very talented New York artist, but I don't know if he was really cut out for animation, specifically for kids. Like, I'm assuming this was supposed to be a kids show pilot, but it's kind of hard to tell, especially considering the second time out of the 2 times they aired this, they aired it on Adult Swim.
And I saw it both times. Yay!
I'm so sorry.
Ugh.
Just again, waste of good voice actors. I mean, they apparently had Paul Rubens money to spare, because they got Paul Rubens. You got the late great Dennis Hopper is in this as 2 different characters.
Jeff Bennett.
Jeff Bennett, yeah, as weird French/Spanish/European in general quotation marks alien who has a mustache that signifies he has a boner.
They got RuPaul, I think.
Speaking about their imagery, the tree that has 9 legs and a keyhole in the back that talks in rhyme, what the hell was that?
I'm just thinking, what the hell was up with that dog that didn't make dog sounds?
Looky, yeah, the dog with multiple eyes that sounds like that makes random animal noises. And the plot itself is like, okay, so it takes place, the beginning of the pilot takes place on a planet called Jeepers, which is supposed to be the, quote, boring normal planet. And the reason for that is because it's inhabited by what I can only describe as like Tim Burton's nightmare idea of suburbia. Because like everyone there is boring and has a job and doesn't get to do fun artistic painting and slam poetry or whatever garbage they were doing. And then these 2 main characters, what was it, Jet and Glendy, and their dog Looky, who we mentioned, they find out from a friend of theirs there's a planet called Gruvenia where they can have fun and everything is free and they can do whatever they want all day. But their parents have different ideas for them. They say they want Jet to get married to Glendy's sister, even though he doesn't love her, and they want her to get a job at a bank, which involves a tentacle somehow. I don't want to know.
I don't think we're supposed to see tentacle hentai today.
I think in the review I said something like, yeah, insert Zone Tunes joke here, something like that.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. But they say, screw that noise, we don't want to do that, so then they just take off and get to this airport rocket ship that takes them to Gruvenia. Oh, and then, like, again, Jeepers is supposed to be the boring normal planet, but apparently whenever someone tries to step out of line, everybody turns into a rejected Rob Zombie demon. It's super in your face, like the message they're going for, because when they get to Gruvenia, yes, they have an extended dance sequence set to some really terrible music, which is sad because the B-52s, which are a great band, they did Rock Lobster and Love Shack and the Rocko's Modern Life theme. They've done tons of good stuff. They basically did this as a call-in favor because Kenny Scharf did their album arts. So they did the theme song and they did some of the other extra music that's in the background. After this extended dance sequence, they basically reveal who runs this planet are these generic money-loving robots called the Normals, and they're run by King Norman, King of the Normals, who's one of the 2 characters played by Dennis Hopper, who is sadly one of the more entertaining things, because Dennis Hopper is at least having fun with it.
Yeah, his song sequence was technically the best part of this thing.
But yeah, like that's basically where the message comes to the forefront. Not like there was any subtlety to begin with, but the message is basically, oh, artsy fartsy beatniks and hippies. They're the ones that really get everything, man. And people who have jobs and get paid for a living and dream about having nice things and money. They're bad. They're normal. They're bad, and it's just like it's really condescending, especially like the dialogue they have in between certain scenes. Like there's one part where Jet and Glendy are talking about leaving Jeepers, and she says something like, "I have such potential. You have such potential. We have such artistic potential, and it will never be met if we stay here." And I'm like, is this like that? I think that's when you have to ask yourself, it's like, okay, who's the audience for this?
Another weird thing is when they go to the apartment with these new characters, it suddenly turns into a sitcom because they randomly add a laugh track.
Because Hanna-Barbera did it? ? I don't even. Yeah, that was just weird. I don't know why they did that.
It was stupid when they did it in Hanna-Barbera cartoons, and it's stupid now.
Yes, agreed. And the pilot ends as disappointing as ever because it's like, oh no, we managed to get rid of King Norman, but what if him and the normals come back? And they basically just say, oh well, tomorrow's another day. Until then, let's just party. Like
have some cake.
Have some cake. Let them eat cake, just like Marie Antoinette said. Like here's how unsubtle the dialogue is. At one point, Jet and Glendy tell the parents that they don't want to do what they want them to do, basically. And the dad says, ugh, I can't handle this free thinking insanity. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's subtle.
Subtle as a brick to the head.
Yeah. So yeah, screw the Gravenians. Badly animated, horribly preachy and condescending, waste of good voice actors, and seriously, it's way too out there. Like I'm perfectly fine with shows that have weird visuals, but there has to be at least some level of setup to it. This is just like one big. It's a glorified acid trip, basically.
Well, explains the trip to Gravenia.
And explains the talking tree. All right, so yeah, screw the Gravenians. It sucks. Number 13, 12, and 11 are all bad sitcoms, so I'm gonna blow through these as quick as I can. Number 13 is Shit My Dad Says. Number 12 is Cavemen, and number 11 is Baby Bob, because these are all really bad sitcoms that are based on the flimsiest of things. So to start it off, Shit My Dad Says is a sitcom literally based off of a Twitter account.
Ugh.
And it stars William Shatner and a guy who looks like Paul Rudd, but actually isn't Paul Rudd. And so the Twitter account basically was just a person posting stuff that their dad would say, allegedly. I mean, who knows? Maybe it wasn't even true. Maybe they would just post random things and say, oh, that's what my dad said. But once it got popular, once the account went viral, some heads over at Warner Brothers went, hey, let's make a show based around that. People will find that niche, will find that kitschy and funny. But it wasn't. It was just really generic. Like the whole plot is that a son has to move back in with his dad, who he has a rough relationship with. And I guess they wanted to make the dad like funny and say a bunch of like quips every now and again, but they just aren't funny at all. Like for example, the first episode has him go to the DMV at one point. The guy says, he points to an eye chart and goes, oh, so tell me what you see. And William Shatner goes, 2 squirrels fornicating. Really? No, it's a series of letters. What else would it be? And that's basically the caliber of humor you're going to get in this thing. It's just a bunch of like really lame attempts at quips, I guess. Of course, the son doesn't want to move back in at first. He asks like, oh, where's mom? And he says something about like, we separated. Now she's in Italy with some guy twice her age or whatever. They set up a subplot involving the guy's sister and her husband, played by Mad TV's very own Will Sasso and Nicole Sullivan, who are both really funny, but they don't really give them a whole lot to work with.
That is the worst crime you can commit when it comes to comedy. Not giving funny people something funny to do.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the guy playing the son, like, I joked about him looking like the poor man's Paul Rudd. He's trying, but the script itself doesn't really give them a whole lot to work with. It's like, they try to set up, like, the dad's a ball buster, I guess, but he's honestly, like, he's more than willing to let his son move in with him, but his son is embarrassed by him. Like, they really don't give them a whole lot to work with in terms of motivation. But, of course, at the end of the episode, they have it that the son eventually comes back around because they throw in this thing about Nicole Sullivan and her husband not wanting to move in because they got their own lives going on, and they treat that as if it's like a bad thing, and it's like, sorry guys, but they have their own lives to live. I'm sorry, they can't move back in with you, William Shatner. Yeah, so the son's like, okay, you know, my girlfriend doesn't want me. She kicked me out. That's why I have to move back in. Let's try and make it work, Dad. And I will say this, the one funny thing in this whole pilot was at the very end during the credits, there's a part where he's listening to, the son is listening to a record that they established that William Shatner used to listen to with his wife. And he's dancing to the music, and William Shatner walks in and is like, what are you doing? And the son's like, oh, I'm just listening to this old album that you and Mom used to listen to. Yeah, I remember you would say something like, and he does a William Shatner impression. He actually does like the whole like, oh, I am talking like this. And then William Shatner's like, why does everybody talk like that when they imitate me? I'm like, all right, that was actually funny. But yeah, other than that, I mean, the fact that somehow lasted like a season and a half, I will never understand that.
Yeah, I never heard of it. Probably a good thing.
Yeah, it's just one of the many examples of forgettable television that it just comes and goes and no one remembers it at all. Except for people like me who like to categorize stuff like this. And speaking of which, then that brings us to Cavemen, which, yes, they actually made a TV series out of the Geico Cavemen commercials from the early 2000s.
That was such a stupid idea.
And like, okay, the premise of the commercials is that you'd have a bunch of cavemen who are living in modern times taking offense to the slogan that Geico had at the time, which was, so easy a caveman could do it. And so you'd have these like cavemen in modern clothing seeing like a billboard or something that says that, and they go, hey, and that's the joke. It's like, all right, well, it's, you know, it's funny for a couple commercials. It's not really something you make an entire TV show out of. The pilot, which I didn't review, other people have reviewed the pilot before me, was a lot worse because the pilot took place in like Georgia, and at one point it involved them going to some party with a bunch of like rich Texans or whatever, and they have some line about the Civil War, which is really uncomfortable because then it makes you think like, is this show implying, or does this show take place in a world where the Civil War was fought over cavemen? Because if so, that's really bad.
Yeah, that would be super awkward.
So thankfully they updated it. Instead, they have it take place in like San Diego or San Francisco. It's somewhere in California, and they live in an apartment, and you basically have your archetypes. You have one guy he's just kind of the regular guy. He goes out to a retail job. In this case, he works at like some IKEA place. Then you got the kind of hipster, stereotype liberal type of character who takes offense to, oh, these modern everyday folk, they don't understand the struggle that us cavemen go through. Like they have a thing where he says like, oh yeah, I find, he says something about the Flintstones being offensive or whatever, and it's like, okay, wow, seriously.
Yeah, this sounds kind of like an awkward show.
And I feel bad because I'm not the world's biggest Nick Kroll fan. I think he's a very talented voice actor. I think he usually gets the shaft because he ends up in a lot of stuff I hate. But I give him credit. He is trying in this show, and I really felt bad for him playing this obnoxious character. And then you got the third guy, Andy, who I think is supposed to be the brother of the main character who works at IKEA or whatever. Oh, I love it. You could tell how dated the show was because the very first episode involves them buying a bunch of stuff, and one of the things they buy was the, at the time, recently released Nintendo Wii, and it shows them playing Wii Sports. And I was like, man, that goes to show how the Wii was so overhyped back then. The conflict of the first episode that I reviewed, it's pretty much that the main guy thinks that his girlfriend, who is not a caveman, or I'm sorry, in this case, a cave woman, he's nervous that her friends won't like him because he's different, and then it turns out at the end that her friends knew he was a caveman all along, and that he was worried about nothing. It's like honestly, it feels like the fact that these guys are cavemen is like totally. It feels like an afterthought. It really doesn't have to be a show about cavemen.
Yeah, I feel like they should have just stuck with the commercials and that's it.
Which is funny because the show lasted, let's see, it either went for a season and a half or maybe it went for 2 seasons. I'm currently blanking on it right now. But I will say this, I find it funny that the very last Geico Cavemen commercial they ever did was poking fun at how bad the show was. Because the last commercial to do that had 2 cavemen sitting at home watching TV, and then they go, man, a show about Geico cavemen, and they didn't even cast real cavemen? Yeah, what was up with that? The makeup was so fake. Man, that was so stupid. I'm like, you know what? Props to whoever wrote that commercial, because the fact that they were able to acknowledge that this was a dumb idea, that person deserved a raise. And then lastly, we get to Baby Bob, which is a number 11. And yeah, Baby Bob is a stupid show based off of the Quiznos Baby commercials, which was basically one of the many attempts at trying to bank off of, oh, wouldn't it be funny if a baby had CGI lips that moved and you made the baby sound like an adult? And no, it's not cute. It's incredibly creepy.
Oh, I can't believe they actually did that.
It's so horrifying. And like, okay, you're going to use that for, again, just like with Cavemen, you want to use that as a commercial idea? Fine. I would argue that, you know, the Super Bowl baby commercials were enough, but okay, sure, Quiznos, you want to jump on that? Fine. And it was bad enough when the Super Bowl baby commercials did it. Hell, it was bad enough when Baby Geniuses did it.
There was no reason for it.
But anyway, the plot of the show is very simple. It's, you know, this recently married couple. They had their first baby. In the first episode, the mom wants to go back to work, but she has to take care of her newborn. Even though you look at the baby, it's clearly not a newborn. It looks like it's like 3 years old. It's like, that was just weird. And once she's alone with the baby after having some family members over, the baby starts talking, and it has the voice of like a 40-year-old man. The dad is like, he works in like sports marketing or something. He's like an agent, a talent agent for a sports company or something. Because they have a oh so clever joke about how, man, that baby is so good at talking. He talks better than half of my clients.
Ah.
One of the only few lines I laughed at, and it was a blatant reference, but one of the few times I laughed was when the dad's like, honey, you're taking this awfully well. Like they're able to get the baby to sleep, or like they go to another room where he can't hear them or something. It's like, you're taking this awfully well. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to contain all of my fear. I mean, I feel like I'm in an episode of The Twilight Zone. I feel like Rod Sterling's going to walk out any minute. They try to have this whole subplot, like for the rest of the episode, that they try to keep the baby from talking in public. And they do this by making up a lie saying that babies that talk will be taken away. But then eventually it all comes out. They're like, well, you know, you're just special because you're a talking baby, and a lot of babies can't talk, and yada yada. And eventually a bunch of truths come out, like the mom admits that she wants to go back to work, and the truth finally comes out. Everybody makes up, no feelings were hurt. And then the end of the episode has this joke where the parents are supposed to go out to this meeting, like some dinner somewhere, and they have a babysitter. And I was thinking, okay, so they're going to end with the baby starts talking, and then the babysitter runs out screaming or something. But then it turns out that the babysitter not only knows that the baby can talk, but actually starts taking dating advice from it. And I'm like, wow, first super babies, and now this. It's sad when you're taking dating advice from an infant.
No kidding.
So yeah, it's a stupid show. I can't believe it lasted as long. The fact that it went for like a season and a half, maybe 2 seasons, that baffles me. It's like, this is such a stupid idea, and somehow stretched out for this long. So now we're in the home stretch. We're in the top 10 now, the creme de la creme, and we have number 10, Mind of Mencia. I don't know if you remember Carlos Mencia and his quote unquote career, but okay. So this was basically, simply put, it's a skit comedy show that it basically came out because Comedy Central was like, well, we just lost the Chappelle show, so now we have to try and find a new thing to replace it. And simply put, Carlos Mencia is up there with Amy Schumer as one of the unfunniest comedians ever. Because, okay, he falls in the same category as like Dane Cook, in that a lot of his humor relies on him yelling randomly, which isn't funny. And like it's kind of like Key and Peele or Chappelle Show, like how they format it, where it's like some of it's like stand up, and then they interject like skits and parodies in the middle, and a lot of them are terrible. They're really bad. A lot of the humor in it relies on stereotype humor and lazy stereotype humor, and that's pretty much a lot of Carlos Mencia's humor in general. Is he just relies on lazy Hispanic stereotypes. And like, down to his accent. A lot of his humor comes to, hey, man, I'm talking in a funny Mexican accent, man. That's a lot of it, and it's just not funny. He is just, like, his stand-up is so bad. And he does this thing. It pops up in a lot of episodes. This was a rant video. I only talked about, like, the first episode I could even watch. And then I binged a couple of other skits. Well, he does this thing during a lot of his stand-ups where he'll point to someone in the audience, and then he'll try to get them to smile. And once they start like smiling or cracking up awkwardly, he goes, "Oh, look at them! They're laughing! You see their face? They're laughing!" And it's just like, all right, well, this is just more awkward than funny.
Yeah, I'd feel intimidated rather than experiencing joy from laughter.
Like, oh, look at that! Look at that! Oh, look at that! They're laughing! Look at that! It's like, yes, please acknowledge.
Yeah, at least he's got something with being Felix Boulevardes on Louder and Prouder. That's about it.
That's about it. Whatever keeps him away from a comedy stage. But anyway, okay, so number 9, something even worse than that is a terrible attempt at making an animated series based on an amazing comedy film, and that's why number 9 is Spaceballs, the animated series.
Oh.
So going back to the terrible animation, this show it looks like sub Newgrounds animation, and that's not going to be the only time we say it for this show, because there's a couple of other shows that have animation that's just as bad, if not worse. Like Hammerman was bad, but the animation in this show is somehow like it has uglier designs.
Yeah, and I feel sorry for the voice actors that they forced to be in this turkey.
Oh, especially one of the most underrated voice actors in my opinion, D. Bradley Baker, who is doing Dark Helmet. I felt so sorry for him every time like his character was on screen.
He deserves a lot better.
He does. He really does. And this show, for some reason, like the only time they actually parody Star Wars is in the very first episode when they parody the prequels. And while it does have like one thing that I probably chuckled at, it is just otherwise not funny at all. And it breaks my heart to find out that Mel Brooks not only did his voice in the show, he plays Yogurt and President Scrooge once again, but unfortunately, he also wrote a decent handful of episodes, and it's like, oh no, this is bad this is like Seltzerberg level parody and satire, and the fact that it's coming from a Mel Brooks production just breaks my heart. It really does.
No kidding.
I mean, like every other episode after the first episode is a parody of like every other popular thing under the sun: Terminator, Titanic, Harry Potter, Jurassic Park, Pirates of the Caribbean, Spider-Man. Like seriously, like an American Idol parody of all things. It's like, really, like there were other Star Wars shows on at the time. There were multiple Star Wars shows. Why the hell did they not just parody those?
Yeah. Doesn't make any sense.
There was the Genndy Tartakovsky one. There was the CG one, Clone Wars, which I think that's still going. I could be wrong. I'm not.
No, that one ended recently.
Okay. Well, either way, it was on at the time, so they easily could have parodied any of these kind of shows, and for some reason they just didn't. It's like, man, like the original Spaceballs is still a classic movie, but screw Spaceballs animated series. It sucks.
Yep.
And thank God it only lasted for one season. They didn't get around to making a second. So let's see. What's next? Oh, okay. Number 8. This is probably going to be on yours. Number 8, Rugrats preschool days.
Oof. I only heard about this later on after Rugrats was off the air for me, but seeing the animation style change, go from the squiggly lines to more straight-laced, the straight-laced actually made them look scarier.
Yeah, especially when the characters smile, because me and Shannon did a commentary on this, and every time they smiled, it genuinely freaked us out because it's so uncanny valley. Like everybody has these like weird Joker smiles. It's just so disturbing.
It looks like they're going to eat you.
and if it isn't that, the animation looks on par with like one of those flash animated videos during Elsa Gate on YouTube, all those creepy like animation channels for kids on YouTube. It looks like that.
I'm a little scared to ask about that.
We can talk about that later because that's a whole rabbit hole in itself.
Oh, jeez.
But yeah, I think it's very telling that this was their final attempt at trying to cash in on Rugrats before Nickelodeon eventually said, nope, screw it, SpongeBob's our new breadwinner. You want to know how bad this was? 5 episodes were produced and only 3 of them were aired. It was that much of a failure.
I never saw any of them, so probably not a good sign.
Yeah, because they barely advertised it. And yeah, I know, I've said this like once or twice in other videos. I'm not a fan of All Grown Up. I like the special for it. The series I was kind of mixed on, but you know what? At least All Grown Up was the least bad of the Rugrats spin-offs compared to this.
Yeah, I'll take All Grown Up. Heck, I'll even take the Rugrats Meet the Wild Thornberries over this.
Yes, yes. I'll get to that eventually. I'll do a review on that. Rugrats 1991. Jared, I know you're probably looking forward to that review. I am too. But all I can say is, as much as I didn't care for that movie, it's still not Rugrats preschool days. This is the rock bottom of the Rugrats franchise for sure.
No kidding.
And just like the new characters they have, yes, they set them up before in a previous episode, which honestly, that episode, Preschool Days from the original Rugrats, is just a better version of the show in general. But
yes.
But like the fact that Susie and Angelica are the main characters, like maybe on paper this could have worked. Have it like, kind of a yin and yang scenario. You have one character who's good and one character who's spoiled to the core. And that's pretty much what Angelica is. The difference is in the actual series, you had a ton of good characters, i.e., the babies, the main characters, to even that out. Angelica was supposed to be the antagonist, making her one of the main characters and having Susie occasionally tell her, "Oh yeah, don't do that. That's bad," and then she goes ahead and does it anyway. It gets insufferable to watch after a while.
I think it's the eyes on the characters that also freak me out. They look dead.
Yeah, like they tried giving up. Like I think they tried making the characters look cuter, but it's funny because they had the opposite effect. They made them creepier.
They made them scary.
Yeah, it's and that's a criticism of the original Rugrats or any Klasky Suppo animations before. I never really understood. Like, I get if people don't like the animation style, but I never really thought it was ugly. I always thought it was stylized. That's the way I would categorize it.
Yeah.
It's like it's kind of the same thing as Ed, Ed and Eddie for me. It's like, yeah, the animation, or Beavis and Butthead or South Park even. It's like it's not supposed to look clean. It's that's what makes it charming.
Yeah, it was distinctive.
Yeah, it helped give it a personality, which Rugrats Preschool Days lacks. It lacks personality, and I'm pretty sure it lacks soul.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so that's the worst thing to come out of Rugrats. Number 7 on my list is the worst thing to come out of Cartoon Network, and that is obviously Out of Jimmy's Head. This came out at a bad time for Cartoon Network. 2007 to 2009, I want to say, was probably Cartoon Network.
2009, 2010.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, like around that time. That was not a good period for Cartoon Network. Cartoon Network's CEO at the time jumped ship because of a bunch of controversies surrounding the marketing for Aqua Teen Hunger Force, the movie. And so what they did was, as a last-ditch effort to try and save the brand, one of the changes they made was they got rid of Cartoon Fridays, or Fridays at that time, and they replaced it with Fried Dynamite, which is on my honorable mentions, actually, from when I reviewed that block. But easily the worst thing to come out of that period for Cartoon Network is easily the show Out of Jimmy's Head, and its movie pilot, Reanimated. Because, simply put, my biggest problem is, okay, the premise is very simple. It's a boy that sees cartoons in the real world, and he's the only one that sees them. So, there's lots of comedy in that he looks crazy around other people who can't see the cartoon characters. The problem is the world of the live action people is even weirder than the cartoon characters themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have it that, like, they have a supervillain that lives in their house, and the kid's adopted sister is a space alien with, like, alien powers. And in one episode, she dates a werewolf. And so, like, all this weird stuff is happening. It honestly, it makes it feel like the cartoon characters take a backseat to the insanity going on in the world that the show takes place in.
I absolutely despise it.
Simple enough. And also, the production value is just cheap. Like, there was a clip that was going around for a while where they have green screen of the characters riding like a roller coaster in the house. It's awful. Like, it looks like student film, like people just learning how to use a green screen. And
I'll give it this: the characters, they sort of made them less terrible in the show.
I was gonna say, yeah, if you watch the movie, and for some reason they switched the actors for Jimmy's best friend and his love interest. I don't know why they did that. That was just weird.
Yeah, instead of making them Asian actors, they made them black. Okay.
And granted, like, yeah, they made his best friend less of a douchebag because in the movie he was terrible, but he's less annoying. Well, okay, no, every character in this show is still annoying. It's just that they're less obnoxious than they are in the movie. That's not saying much.
They also had a laugh track later on.
Yes, that was the other thing. Honestly, it felt like this show was them trying to replicate like Dan Schneider sitcoms from like Nickelodeon, like iCarly, like because it often had that kind of like lol xd random humor that iCarly had, but somehow even worse. And I wasn't the world's biggest fan of iCarly.
Yeah, I'm not a particular fan of shows that have laugh tracks, but I think it's the Dan Schneider laugh tracks that are the worst because it's the same damn laugh track every time, and I think they used it for this show.
That's what I was thinking too. Like, and I brought that up in the review. It actually sounds like the same exact laugh track. It's like it's the same canned laughter every time, and it's like, but laugh tracks to me in sitcoms are some of the laziest shit in the world because it really just feels like somebody behind a keyboard pushing a button as a lame way to tell the audience, you're supposed to laugh at this. You're not laughing, but you're supposed to. So out of Jimmy's head, it's an unfunny sitcom, but number 6 feels like an absolute bastardization of a beloved character, and that's why my number 6 is Wonder Woman, the 2011 pilot.
Ooh.
Like, okay, let's get the obvious problem for this one out of the way. They made Wonder Woman incredibly unlikable. This is like, I did this as a commentary with Edge Lourdes, Kayla, a friend of ours, and honestly, it feels like the worst representation of Wonder Woman, like even more so than like how they portrayed Batman and Superman in the Zack Snyder movies.
That was a very, very poor time for Wonder Woman. Thank God for the one from the movie from a few years ago.
Yeah, one of the few actually good DC Cinematic Universe movies.
Exactly.
Oh my God, because they make Wonder Woman so unlikable, and they actually make it a plot point all throughout the pilot, and they have characters constantly say, "Oh yeah, there's a reason that people don't trust superheroes because people like you you go out and kill people, and yeah, sure, maybe some of them are like low lives or common crooks, but like you actually go out of your way and kill these people." To have Wonder Woman threaten to snap a man's arm, and then it cuts out to the hallway, and you hear the man scream in pain as if she actually did it. It's like, that's not Wonder Woman.
It's Frank Miller's Wonder Woman, but not actual Wonder Woman.
Sure, yeah. I think I even said in the commentary, I'm like, this is like Frank Miller's wet dream come to life. I hate it.
Ugh. Ditto here, buddy.
And like, I know this was a pilot, so the effects aren't that good. Like, there's obviously a bunch of trick wire stuff going on, and like terrible green screen effects, but I gotta be honest, they made me laugh. Like, it was like some of the only joy I got out of this entire pilot, seeing the terrible effects. I'm like, man, like the parts where she's in this like jet flying around the city, I'm like, oh man, this looks like something out of Spy Kids, except worse.
Pants to be darkened.
All right, so now we're in the top 5, and this was actually the easiest for me to put together. I knew right away what my top 5 was because these are some of the earliest examples of shows that I absolutely hated reviewing. So let's get these out of the way. Number 5, Pope Town.
Ooh, I remember we watched that briefly.
Yes, you, me, and Shannon, we watched the first episode to take notes, and it's terrible. It really is.
Why did the Pope sound like a little kid?
That was the thing that like made me curious to check it out, because I remember somebody did, I think it was Danger Dolan or whatever, somebody did like a countdown of worst animated pieces of television or whatever, and a lot of them I'd already seen. A lot of them were like bad episodes, like notorious, infamous episodes of shows, like controversial episodes of South Park or Beavis and Butthead or whatever. And I was like, okay, yeah, I know what these are. But then this one came up, and I was like, what the hell is this? And the only description they gave it was, oh, it's a show about the Pope, but the Pope is a snot-nosed little kid. And I was like, has anyone reviewed this yet? And then I looked to see on YouTube if anyone did a review of it. Nobody did. So I was like, well, I'm up for the challenge. And sure enough, yeah, it's terrible. It's like, it's trying to be like South Park, and say what you want about South Park. I'm friends with plenty of reviewers that don't like South Park. But South Park, it actually has a respect for religion in a way. Like I've seen interviews with Trey Parker and Matt Stone, and they say, like, oh, people think we hate religion. We don't. We actually find it fascinating. That's why we make episodes about it. This show feels like if a 14-year-old went on r/atheism for the first time and just went, oh, well, I'm an atheist now. Like that's it. It's made by someone who, it's like trying to be critical of the Catholic Church, but it has nothing to say. The only kind of satirical thing is you have these like 3 high priest characters, and every time you see them, they have like expensive drinks, or they're swimming in money, or they have like lavish, expensive things all around them. So it's like, okay, so are they trying to say that organized religion profits off of people and like is just a way to scam people out of money? It's like maybe if the show did something more with that, it would actually count as satire, but it doesn't. And like even other shows that use Catholics or priests as like main characters, like Father Ted, which is amazing. It's a hilarious show. Father Ted, the main characters are priests, but they don't do anything with it. But it backs it up by the fact that it has some really funny comedy in it. You know, it's a show about a young guy who hangs out with these older priests who are trying to show him the ropes, but of course they're a bunch of old drunks who basically don't know what they're doing at that point. And it's actually really charming and really funny because the characters, you know, while they might be foul-mouthed, they're actually likable. Nobody in the show is likable, especially the Pope, who is basically just he's basically just the poor man's Eric Cartman in the show. He's just unlikable. He's not funny. Oh, and Shannon, if you see this, I think you'd like to know that the person who voiced the Pope in this also did a voice in Sir Billy, which was another piece of shit that we sat through. So, yeah, this actress does not have a good track record. Anyway, moving on. Number 4, I find it interesting. I actually did this for a tribute zone once, and the person who I did the tribute zone on ended up doing a proper review of it later down the road. So thanks, Chris. And that show in question is The Nut Shack.
Ugh.
It's the Nut Shack. It's the Nut Shack. All right, so yeah, Popetown was like the poor man's South Park. This show's kind of like the poor man's Boondocks in that it's a show about, you know, it's a culture clash show. But in the Boondocks, it was about, you know, a black family, specifically a grandfather and his 2 grandkids, moving into a suburb. And of course, a bunch of critical and satirical takes on current events would happen with the wonderful cast of characters that the show had. And again, even if you're not a fan of Boondocks or didn't agree with some of the things that they said in certain episodes, at least it was trying to make a statement. This show does not try to make statements whatsoever. Basically, it's about a Filipino family, 2 nephews that live with their uncle, whose name is Dick. One of them is a wannabe gangster who talks wannabe street slang a la the Boom Crew. And then you got the other one who's supposed to be the smart one who sounds like Patrick from SpongeBob for some reason. And so they live with their uncle and they're surrounded by a bunch of wacky characters like a potential love interest, corny white neighbor, and a bunch of other ethnic stereotypes that are uncomfortable to watch. The biggest problem with the show, if it's not trying too hard to be hip, it's poorly animated. Like, I mean, this is like sub-Newgrounds 2004 level animation, and this was somehow on television. Granted, it wasn't popular until it became a meme in like 2016, but still. And the voice acting is terrible. The theme song is obnoxious, which is why it eventually got memed into oblivion. I will say that was one of the funniest things to find out, though. I went online once and found that there was a behind-the-scenes featurette of people who worked on the show, and everyone just looks so awkward, like they're embarrassed of what they made, and I'm like, I don't blame them. Except for one person who was like genuinely proud of what they did.
They must have been delusional.
He's like, oh yeah, man, it was a difficult thing to work on this, but you know, whatever, it's all cool. And I'm like, oh man, like passion can be blinding sometimes. Oh, and there was also a segment where they show how they made the theme song, and unfortunately, everybody looked way too proud of that too. Everyone was in the booth just like, you know, bobbing their heads to the music, and I'm like, oh, like, they must have been time travelers. Maybe they knew someday it would become a meme. So the only way you can watch this show is if you watch it ironically and make fun of it, like, which it seems like a lot of people do. And you know what, like, but like, I don't know. I'm not one of those people. I really can't laugh at anything in the Nut Shack. Like, even ironically, it's not the kind of show that's so bad it's good to me. It's just so like painfully bad all around. Bad animation, annoying, unlikable characters, lame attempts at being hip. It's the Nut Shack. I don't know what else to say. All right, so number 3, here we go, the higher echelon. Number 3 for me is the Slim Shady Show.
Oh yeah, that was a thing.
Now, I got this wrong in my review. I've said this a couple of times. I think that I said that this show was on Fox, or that Fox produced it. From what I gather, it's actually a web cartoon. So this may have been like on, I don't know, Eminem's website or something. Maybe that would explain why the animation is so terrible, because this somehow has even worse animation than the Nut Shack. And the animation is so choppy, it even puts Hammerman to shame. The difference between Hammerman and this is, well, one, Hammerman was so bad it was funny. This is trying to be funny, and it fails miserably.
Maybe rappers should not delve into cartoons.
Unless maybe you're Snoop Dogg or Ice Cube, where at this point you're just like, screw it, I'll do it for money. That's the thing. Unlike Hammerman, Eminem actually did supply his own voice for this. And, I mean, his voice acting is all right. I'll give him that, because, I mean, he does work with his voice for a living, so it's like, he was trying, I guess. Because he plays a multitude of characters. He plays Slim Shady, Marshall, who I'm assuming is supposed to be like his young, innocent self before he was quote unquote corrupted by Slim Shady, I guess. In one episode, he plays Eminem, so he's playing his stage persona, I guess. And then he plays a reoccurring character on his albums, Ken Kniff. But other than that, I mean, like, the biggest problem with this show, just like Poketown, it tries to kind of do what South Park does, in that it, like, takes current events and makes fun of them, kind of. But a lot of it just comes off like Eminem just throwing shade at celebrities who aren't even relevant at the time this cartoon was made. Like, this cartoon was made around, like, what, 2003, I think? And it definitely shows. This was not a good period for Eminem. Like, Eminem had this problem with a lot of his music where he would just make fun of random celebrities just because he could. And it's like, it shows a lot throughout here. They make fun of Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. They make fun of Fred Savage. Who else was it? They make fun of Everlast from House of Pain. And I got to talk about the episode that I reviewed. I reviewed this for a Halloween episode once. And the episode I reviewed involves the characters getting a Ouija board, which has such great dialogue as, okay, everybody start chanting. Chant what? I don't know, just chant something. Fantastic dialogue. Great. Awesome. And who they bring back with the Ouija board includes New Kids on the Block, and they make a joke about, but wait, you're not dead. Yeah, but our careers sure are.
No.
They bring back Kurt Cobain, and the joke, quote unquote, is that his body comes back, but the top of his head is missing because he shot it. And they also bring back the ghost of Versace, the famous fashionista. And he gives them new clothes to wear to some party they go to. And then they throw in the Olsen twins and John Stamos and Joey Lawrence for some reason. Like, again, like, all the celebrity insults are so out of place and random. Like, they go to this party, John Stamos is there, and they go, oh yeah, screw you, John Stamos, you suck. And then he says something like, yes, but I'm rich, hung like a horse, and I have like a successful career, and at least I'm not Joey Lawrence. And then it pans over, and Joey Lawrence, a guy doing a really terrible Joey Lawrence impression, goes, whoa, you guys want some punch? Whoa! And then John Stamos punches him. It seriously feels like you're watching like a collection of Family Guy cutaway gags. It's just so random and unfunny.
Like Family Guy.
Exactly, yeah. And then the episode ends with Eminem and I forget the character's name, but he's played by Exhibit, who could be funny. And I feel bad because he's actually not a terrible voice actor, because he was also in The Night Before Christmas, that Cartoon Network special that sucked.
Yeah.
Him and Eminem, and him and Slim Shady have a four-way with the Olsen twins. Yeah, Eminem had a really uncomfortable thing with the Olsen twins, because this is like not the first time he's mentioned them. That's just weird.
Ew.
Yeah. Uncomfortably enough, he also referenced the Olsen twins getting into sexual relations in a song called Ass Like That, which is easily one of Eminem's worst songs.
Ew.
Yeah, so Eminem, you're not a bad rapper. You've made lots of great music. You're one of the best rappers. You wrote Stan, which is one of the greatest rap songs ever made. But this shit sucks. Okay, let's just be real. This sucks. Okay.
Yep.
So number 2, you know what? Slim Shady show, it was bad, but this next show was so bad, I felt nothing but contempt. I felt the opposite of joy when watching the show, and that's why number 2 for me is Alan Gregory.
Ugh.
So Jonah Hill produced this. This was a show that Fox had for this old block they used to have called like Animation Domination, I think. And it gave us some good shows, you know, Archer, back when it was still really funny instead of just, you know, mildly entertaining, and Bob's Burgers. But then you also got some really forgettable, mediocre shows like the Napoleon Dynamite cartoon and a couple of other things. But this is easily the worst thing that ever came out of it. The sad thing is, I like Jonah Hill. He can be really funny. But this is
not in this.
No, no. So basically, the plot of the show is, once again, you have a smug, annoying child who talks like a 40-year-old man. Except, unlike Baby Bob, they make this kid such a pretentious little shit. And he is so unlikable, so self-serving, so condescending. He's the several times you're just thinking this kid deserves to have his ass kicked, or at least hung up a flagpole by his underwear, something, because he's just such an unlikable douchebag. Yeah, he's in love with his principal, who's this older, larger woman, and they have scenes where he's turned on by the visions of her set to a Phil Collins song. It's just really creepy. It's very creepy, and also I find it weird, like, because like every other kid character, with the exception of maybe like one or two, all sound like miniature adults, and it's like, so I thought the whole point of the show was that, you know, this kid was different because he was a kid that sounded like an adult, but every other kid in the show sounds like one, so it doesn't even matter. He comes from he's adopted by a quote-unquote homosexual couple, which consists of French Stewart playing a Lex Luthor-looking dude who basically, you know, stalked, harassed, and bullied a man who was straight and had a wife and kids into marrying him, and he like just cannot get away from him. He's basically locked into this marriage. And like once they actually come out and reveal that, you're just like, show, this just got really sad. This is just depressing now. I like what Brandon said in his review, the hardcore kid. He was like, yeah, Cam and Mitchell from Modern Family, these guys aren't. So I'm like, yeah, you pretty much took the words right out of my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus. And the only character that's actually kind of likable in the show is his adopted sister, who is this girl from Cambodia who she has like this, like, she has a very large forehead for one. And well, her character, she's basically kind of like this precocious little girl who hates everything. Not that you can really blame her, because her adopted fathers suck, and her little brother's a pretentious snot. So, like, you can't really blame. She was the most likable character just based on the fact that she openly admitted that she was in a terrible situation.
Yeah, I kind of wanted her and the father that was forced into the marriage to just run away, have him go back to his wife and kids, adopt her there, and leave creepy Lex Luthor dad and creepy child alone.
Creepy child. And my favorite thing about this, though, is that Fox knew how much of an embarrassment this was. They pulled the plug after about like 8 or 9 episodes, rightfully so, because yeah, nobody was watching this show. It's like, as much as I don't like Modern Family Guy, especially, the fact that they actually had the balls to call out Family Guy in their marketing campaign, it's like, guys, I hate to tell you this, but people are going to be watching Family Guy. They might not like it, but people are watching it. Nobody was watching Alan Gregory when it was on.
Before we go to your number one, the art style for it was not good.
No, yeah, it looked weird. Like if you looked at a still frame of it, you'd be like, oh, that looks okay, I guess. And then when you see it play out, it's stiff, and the character designs aren't that great. It looks like the animation you'd see in like a really bad generic local car dealership commercial.
Or insurance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It looks like a bad insurance commercial. It looks like a worse version of those, like, I forget the name of it, but you remember those old commercials with like that lady who had pink hair and she was like a spy or something?
Yeah, and they got rid of her because people were making naughty fan art of her.
Of course. Thanks, Internet.
Yeah, I like those commercials.
I did too.
The internet ruined it.
I was gonna say, I'm like, what happened to those commercials? And then Saber Spark, I think, did a video where it's like, oh yeah, it's because people drew porn of that character. I'm like, that explains it.
Yes.
But number one, you know what? As bad as some of these other shows are, at least they're bad, but there's some mild hint of effort, even if the shows are terrible. My number one is the epitome of laziness when it comes to television, And it's not just one show, it's an entire channel. And that is, of course, the channel that me, Nostalgia Kid, and Duke CT ranted about once at a MagFest. And that channel is TLC.
Wow.
Like, TLC to me, for a very long time, and they progressively have gotten worse, comes off as the network that it pretty much answers the whole quality versus quantity argument. And when it comes to TLC, look, back in the day, they used to be great. Back in the day, TLC used to stand for the Learning Channel. And they had stuff like the Magic School Bus, which was great.
But it didn't do well after?
Nope. Yeah. Okay. So TLC's programming, I feel, is broken up into two categories. You have the fluff pieces, which is stuff like, Cupcake War or Say Yes to the Dress or Four Weddings or stuff like that. It's like there's shows that are, they're inoffensive. They're not really anything great, but whatever. They're just, like if people are into stuff like that, then yeah, this is the kind of show for you. You put it on in the background. You have to pay attention to it. Yeah, all right. That was some time killed. Whatever. Then you got the shows that feel like they are genuinely just filming people who have miserable lives and then broadcasting it and then trying to spin it as, oh no, we're trying to give people representation. We're trying to represent people who don't get play regularly. But it feels exploitive. It really does. And the biggest example of that was when they had shows like Honey Boo Boo and I forget the name of it, but the one with the Duggar family. It was like 16 and up or something like that. It's this like pasty white Mormon family that has like over 16, I think now like
God.
20 kids. I forget. Eventually it got, and both of them ended because of pedophilia. So make of that as you will. And then ever since then, TLC just kept pumping out more of these, just like, let's put cameras on random people, who have, and some of them, maybe they are for a good cause. Sometimes they put cameras on people who suffer from disabilities. You have shows like my 600-pound life, where they show people who are trying to go through surgeries to help them lose weight. But then in the same vein, you have shows that just feel like they're exploiting people and making them the butt of a joke. And it makes me go, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have it that like you have shows that are like, we're trying to represent people and show people's struggles and highlight real people.
I don't watch TLC, and I'm glad I don't.
And as of now, I guess I might as well update this. As of now, TLC struck gold with the show that's falls into this category of putting people on TV to make asses of themselves. And their biggest claim to fame recently has been 90 Day Fiance, where you just have these absolutely, they have some really crazy situations going on. And people, the biggest example people can think of is Big Ed, I think that's his name.
Yep, Big Ed and Rose.
Big Ed and Rose. That was a whole thing in itself. And the thing is, TLC knows that this show makes them money. Not only are there other channels who are trying to make shows similar to 90 Day Fiance, they have spin-off shows to 90 Day Fiance, one of which is literally, let's get people who were once on the show to react to the episodes they were in. So yes, TLC is literally marketing crappy reaction videos on their own channel. And it's like, that's the other thing about TLC. Not only is it morally disgusting to me, in terms of content, it's just lazy. It's just putting cameras on random people, filming them for a couple of hours, and then they edit it together with crappy music and crappy editing. That just, it's not, like, unless you watch it to make fun of them, which occasionally me and my sister do, because yeah, every so often we get together and watch these shows just to laugh at how bad they are. Other than that, TLC is just a collective of nothing but really horribly edited, poorly done train wrecks that feel like they're, trying to do something noble and at the same time also taking advantage of people. And I just don't like it. I'm going to run through honorable mentions really quick, and then we can get to your list. All right, so honorable mentions: MLPG3, Barney and the Backyard Gang, oh, and Madball's gross jokes. They're straight to video, so it's kind of hard to tell if these are technically TV shows or if these fall more under like movies, like straight to video movies. It's kind of hard to tell, so that's why I didn't put them on the list. Joey, a shortly lived attempt at a Friends spinoff, which I'm not the world's biggest fan of Friends, but when Friends was good, it was pretty good. This just kind of feels like You take one of the main characters and you surround them with a new bunch of characters, and it just didn't work. Like, at best, you get something like Frasier, which was a spinoff of Cheers, and that was actually good. But Joey, there's a reason it only lasted about 2 seasons. So Fried Dynamite, this would have made the list, but I eventually whittled it down to Out of Jimmy's Head since I did a proper review of that. Let's see. Dumb and Dumber, the animated series, this was the most pointless of the Jim Carrey animated shows. Like, okay, The Mask, based on a series of comic books and a movie. So you can kind of have like superhero style adventures with that. And Ace Ventura, that's about a detective who works with animals who goes to exotic places. There's tons to work with there. Dumb and Dumber was a road trip comedy, and I don't know, it just feels like, I feel like there's not a whole lot to work with Dumb and Dumber to make a cartoon out of it. They even had to add stuff like a wacky animal sidekick and everything. It's like, really? Ferris Bueller, the sitcom, they somehow made Ferris Bueller even more unlikable, and this didn't have to be a Ferris Bueller show. But, I mean, they already had a non-Ferris Bueller show on at the time, which was more successful, and that was obviously Parker Lewis Can't Lose. The Munsters Today, this somehow lasted 3 seasons when the original Munsters lasted 2 seasons. I still find that hard to believe. And while it is kind of funny to see a young Richard Horowitz before he got into voice acting, this just kind of feels like a really lame attempt at modernizing the Munsters, but they do it in a really cheap way that's just not fun. And lastly, I have bad episodes of good shows, because these are the exception to the rule. While these are some bad episodes, they come from good shows, so that's why they didn't make the list. But yeah, bad episodes of stuff like Ed, Edd n Eddy, My Little Pony, SpongeBob, Foster's, maybe the upcoming ones that I might do at some point, like Teenage Robot or Hey Arnold. And like that, my list is done.
Okay, my turn.
I'm curious what you got.
All right. My list, it technically doesn't have all TV shows. There are some movies in there and a live show, but we'll get to that. But here we go. I'm going from what offended me the least to what offended me the most. So, number 10 is Hammerman. It's so stupid. It's laughable, and
Yes.
it was fun to watch, even
Yes.
if the animation was super cringy. Seriously, who animated this? This makes a flip book look good. And the characters themselves could be kind of annoying.
Yes.
It's just, watch it if you want to have a good laugh, because it'll give you that at least.
Yeah, like we said before, it's entertainingly bad. Before you go to number 9, who would you say was the most obnoxious character in that?
Probably the guy that kept trying to give the Hammerman a tuba.
Oh, yeah, Showbiz or whatever. I would say it's tied between him or the Shoes.
Yeah, talking shoes. Why not?
Because why not?
Number 9, Wonder Woman pilot from 2011.
Yes.
Like you said, this was not a good representation of Wonder Woman, because they make her an unlikable jerk that Frank Miller would probably like.
Yep.
She's a businesswoman, a superhero, and has a normal life with her cat.
And she makes a face.
Pick one.
It's like, it like goes along with Kayla's theory that she actually has just split personality syndrome, and she just thinks that she's a superhero, is one of her many alter egos.
Exactly. And the unfinished quality makes it kind of laughable, but also kind of dumb. And
yeah.
Her superhero outfit looked kind of dumb too.
It looked really dumb. Also, did you notice that like at the beginning she had like she had leggings, and then at the end she didn't? It's like, how inconsistent was that?
Yeah. At least the one from a few years ago, her outfit looked classy.
Sure.
Okay. Wonder Woman pilot, not good. Number 8, I'd say this technically counts since they show it as since I saw this a lot on TV. Casper, A Spirited Beginning. This is not a good Casper property.
No, it isn't.
The the characters are really dumb. It shows that Casper is not actually related to his uncles, which why? Why would you have that change? I mean,
Yeah,
it's good
why?
that they adopted them, but they show they don't really like him, so why would you have him not have him be adopted? But wouldn't it make more sense to have them be related?
Yeah, especially since that was a big part of the first movie.
Right. And Steve Gutenberg's character in this was terrible.
Yeah, like Steven. I don't think Steve Gutenberg's a bad actor per se, but he's terrible in this movie. He's awful.
Yeah, you want to know how bad he was? I was hoping that the kid was related to, well, Aunt Becky from in this.
Yeah,
Yes,
she,
Lori Loughlin is in this.
yeah, she's the teacher. And poor Rodney Dangerfield, who like he's only given like I think a couple of scenes as like the mayor. I felt so bad for him, and I also felt bad for James Earl Jones as Kibosh.
Oh God, yeah, I forgot. This was the thing that introduced him, right?
Yeah, his character, and then ever since then he's been played by a bunch of different people.
Yeah, I think I'll stick with the Christmas special from a few years later. Thank you.
Oh, yes, that one. I did a separate video on that. While it's not a great movie, it was way better than this.
Yeah, besides, it got double D in it.
It got yeah, another example of animated Canucksploitation.
Let's see. Again, this is technically a direct-to-video thing, but I'm sure it was shown on TV at some point. The Princess Promenade from My Little Pony G3.
Yeah, Pony Fanboy Media Wiz crossover. Yeah, this was bad.
Ugh. I know people are probably sick of saying, "Oh, G3 sucks. G4 is great. G4 is great." Blah blah blah. But there really is a reason why people have such vitriol towards G3. First of all, the characters, you don't remember them at all. You can tell who they are by their color and hair color, I guess, but unless I knew it was Purple Pony's time to be a princess, I would have thought it would have been any of the other characters. And like you said, this is Canucksploitation when it comes to voice actors. I'm pretty sure you said Sarah's actress is in here a few times.
Yes, I'm sad. I'm sadly blanking on her name, but the voice actress for Sarah, she does Pinkie Pie in all of G3.
Ugh. And doesn't the great and powerful Trixie voice the main Purple Pony?
No. She voices a couple background characters. No, yeah, main Purple Pony, Wisteria, aka not Twilight Sparkle, at this one, because she becomes a princess and she hangs out with Spike the Dragon. So that's and she's purple. That's why she's not Twilight in this. She's played by Tabitha St. Germain, who she played Naz for a very short while on Ed, Edd n Eddy, and she also went on to do Rarity and a bunch of other characters in G4.
Yeah, I'll give the show this. At least it gave the voice actors a template of what not to do when G4 came along.
Yeah, right.
And they improved Spike's character instead of having him be an annoying fop.
Yeah, there's a lot of annoying things in G3. Spike is easily one of the worst ones, because especially in this one, he's such a douchebag. In this one, like he's like an overprotective soccer mom to this Purple Pony that he wants to be princess. It's like oh, this is what a princess does. Like you're not supposed to. Princesses don't sniff flowers. They smile and wave, and it's like screw you.
At least in G4, when Twilight became a princess, she still did things. Not just standing there smiling and waving. She saved the world with her friends multiple times.
And they also made Spike less of an asshole. They like, I'm sorry. I know some people say that Spike was useless or was bad comic relief. Spike at least did things, and he was actually a lot more likable in G4 compared to this.
Exactly. So Princess Promenade and any of the movies from G3, they can go away. But we're not done with G3 yet. I'm gonna pick the live show as my next pick.
Yes.
The costumes are terrifying. Let's just get that out of the way.
With the fucking giant robot eyes and the wobbly mouths and like the two dead back legs.
Oh, they look horrifying.
Awful costume design.
I feel like if I was a little kid and I was dragged to this, I wouldn't be happy. I would be crying and scared.
Oh, it's funny you brought that up. I don't bring it up in the Pony Fanboy review. There's three shots that really make me laugh when they show the audience. There's one where you see a lady clearly sneaking Fritos out of her purse, which I thought that was really funny. I was like, hey, she stuck that shit in. Come on. There's one where they show a little girl who just looks. She's like wide-eyed and mouth agape. I think they tried to imply that it was whimsical and fantastic. She looked terrified.
It's kind of like with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles like rock tour thing where they showed them at Oprah, and the kids didn't look happy. They looked scared.
Oh, coming out of their shells. Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to suffer that eventually coming up.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. And the third thing, there's one shot where they show like at one point they show a little boy in the audience, and for some reason he has Scotch tape on his forehead. It's like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, I want to know that kid's story.
It's like, how did that kid end up here? He looked bored. I'm like, you know what, kid? You know what? Just wait. My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic's around the corner, man. It's some better's around the way.
Yeah, this is just bad.
For a thing called World's Biggest Tea Party, there really wasn't a tea party. There was a giant teapot at the end, but the entire special was them thinking about what they're going to do at the tea party, and then at the very end, they have a song celebrating Biggest Tea Party, and then they don't actually have it.
This feels like a ripoff.
Yeah, I feel bad for anyone that had to go to those.
At least the Rugrats live show that I went to when I was a kid, at least that had more fun. All right, my next one is Hoodwinked 2.
Hood versus Evil.
Yes, that stupid tagline. This movie is insulting.
Yeah.
I'm probably one of the few people that actually liked the first one genuinely, like not as a guilty pleasure, not as a so bad it's good. That film was actually good. The animation was dated, but hey, I liked it. The characters they got them backwards. They made Red the no-nonsense cop and Patrick Warburton Wolf, like the bumbling idiot.
Yeah, I was like, and they barely give him anything cool to do. It's like, oh, come on. Like in the first movie, you had it that, like, you know, he would don costumes and do undercover stuff. It's like, he doesn't even get to do that in this movie. He always wears the same costume, which is a top hat, fake glasses, and a fake beard. And it's like, come on, man. Like, you're going to have a character wear costumes, wear multiple outfits.
I think the design for the city that they go to looks ugly and generic.
Yeah, I agree. Like, they don't even really do anything. Like, at least with the Shrek sequels, okay, you have it Far, Far Away is like a fantasy version of like Hollywood or something like that. It's like, okay, there's something creative in that, and at least in Shrek 2, they did a lot of stuff with that. This movie is just like the city that they're talking about going to in the first movie. They get to the city and it's just a generic like New York, Chicago big city. It's like, didn't even do anything fun with it.
One of the characters, the giant, he looks like just a mafia boss.
Yeah, just generic. I felt bad for Brad Garrett doing the voice for that guy. You know, and he literally does the, you know, oh, what do I amuse you? Am I a clown to you? From Goodfellas, it's like, oh, screw. Oh, that's the other thing. Non-stop references in this one. It's like, screw you, movie.
Yeah, they gave the bunny from the last one the whole Silence of the Lambs thing.
Yeah, the 2011 kids movies had a thing for referencing that. I don't know why.
Oh, they did that in the Chipmunks sequel. Ugh.
Oh, that's right. And Cats and Dogs 2.
Oh God, you're right. The obvious villains were obvious, with Hansel and Gretel being the bad guys and having the worst line in the movie. You got hoodwinked too.
It's like, yeah,
you.
Just hammer that in, movie. Just.
Okay. Next is the Lion and the King.
for Christy Ian.
Yep. I know that there's a lot of knockoffs in the world, but Dingo Pictures probably has some of the worst. They don't try. Everyone sounds like they're asleep. And and how did you even watch the movies doesn't even make sense. They're on game cartridges or game CDs.
Yeah, because they were partnered with, what company was it? Phoenix Games, I believe, and they're pretty much the ones that are responsible for giving Dingo Pictures shelf space. Because they would release, they would release them with these like crappy mini games that were like paint function. They'd have like still shots that probably weren't even from the movie, and you would just use a fill bucket tool to fill in the games or to fill in the images with color. And if it wasn't that, it was a bunch of crappy slide puzzle games, and then you'd have to watch the movie, which was either, I don't know, like 20, 30, 40 minutes long, if that.
The movie doesn't even make sense. Like, it shows a kid, like the two kids of their dad saying, "Hey, should we be friends? No, let's be enemies."
Yeah, the dialogue in this is like a lot of Dingo movies. The dialogue is absolutely terrible. And you know what? Sometimes you're watching a movie from another country. Maybe it's the translation. I think you could be watching this in any language and it would translate poorly.
Well, at least they'll always have "My God,
King Margur."
That's clearly not Mufasa. That's clearly a bad drawing of Simba.
Yeah. So apparently Simba grew old and had himself as a child.
Ugh. Lame. Okay, next is the Mad Balls show pilot thingy that you looked at.
Mad Balls gross jokes. Yeah.
That. I feel bad that you looked at that one instead of the other one, because the other one at least had good voice actors and actual animation to it.
And an actual plot.
Yeah, this just looked like Monty Python's Leftovers.
Yeah, it was like someone really badly trying to emulate Monty Python without any of the level of wit or charm.
It just looked insulting.
And like, despite it being marketed as gross jokes, not a lot of the humor was all that gross in it.
It was
like,
tame.
Yeah, it's like super like, yeah, they reference disgusting smells and stuff like that at some points, but like a lot of it's like the corniest jokes in the world. Like, it seriously was just one step away from like jokes like, "Oh, why did Silly Billy throw a clock out the window? He wanted to see time fly." It's that level of like, it's like someone put animation to a bad kid's joke book.
Just find the other one that had Cree Summer in it as the one female ball.
Yeah.
That one, it looked good. And it actually showed shading on the characters. So that's even better.
Yeah, it actually, someone had a theory that like maybe that was a pilot for a Mad Balls cartoon, and then this gross jokes came along as like a last ditch effort to try and pitch another potential Mad Balls pilot. Like, I don't know if that's true, but I'm willing to believe it. It seems fairly accurate.
All right. Next on my list this is number 2, so it's high up there on the making me mad-o-meter. The Kim Possible live-action movie.
For Blockbuster show. Yeah, this is honestly, rewatching this one, this is probably one of the madder episodes of Blockbusters I've ever done. Granted, it got worse because later I had to talk about Last Airbender, but yeah, this was just an absolute fuck you to like a show that I really liked growing up.
Yeah, and the show warned us about this. There was an episode that showed like what would have happened if they actually did do a Kim Possible movie. But we didn't listen.
And the mole rat will be CGI.
And it was.
And it was. Very badly.
The show didn't even make sense, because it showed Kim had been doing her adventuring stuff for a while now, and yet it shows it's her first day of high school? What?
despite the fact that okay, maybe the actors are high school age, but it seriously looked like middle school. They looked young.
Yeah, and apparently joining the cheer squad is for dorks now. That's why they're on the soccer team, I guess.
Yeah, that was just weird. That was like a really unnecessary change.
I feel so sorry for Christy Carlson Romano for having to be in this, like, not as like Kim's mom or something, but as a pop star called Poppy Blue.
I admittedly thought it was kind of charming. They had her make a cameo. It's like, all right, that's a nice little passing of the torch, but yeah, seriously, screw this movie. This was just painful to watch.
Sadly, the only good parts were Patton Oswalt playing his character Professor Dementor again.
Yes.
Probably because his daughters would never speak to him again if he chose not to do that.
I give him credit. Yeah, he was one of the few bright spots in this dark movie.
Yeah, and the other was the guy playing Draken and the lady playing Shigo. They were actually okay, even if Draken wasn't really blue.
Yeah, that was weird. Although, can we both simultaneously cringe at easily one of the worst jokes in the movie? That being that Draken uses Instagram. I was like, fuck you, movie. Did you really go there?
Oh, it's so dated.
It's like the original show had episodes about like American Idol, boy bands, and wireless game controllers, and yet they're still less dated than that.
Yeah, and it could just be me, or maybe a lot of people thought this too, but Kim in this movie was not very likable.
No, not really. They made her more of a dork, which she wasn't. She was a cheerleader. She was the most popular girl in school in the original show. And then here they make her
cool.
this. And then in this show, or in this movie, they make her this like clingy, obsessive type who like she'll do anything to get the new girl to be her best friend or whatever. And it's like Kim was not that much of a loser in the original show.
Yeah, I mean, she was kind and would help out, but she would never be this desperate or show-offy.
The closest thing to something like this in the original show was I think there was a couple of episodes where she was jealous that Ron was interested in another girl. But that was the show's way of setting up that they were eventually going to get together. So that at least makes sense. Here
yeah,
it's just
but she wasn't a total brat about it.
No, exactly, yeah.
Ugh. And why did they have Draken turn into a little boy by the end?
Yeah, Stitch in Time did it.
Yeah, it did it better.
Oh god. Oh, and they even do just like in So the Drama, they have it that one of the characters is an android built by Draken and Shigo to like lure Kim, like to eventually capture her. Oh yeah, and the whole plot of the movie is they make a device that will quote steal her spark, so that way she won't be able to stop them. It's like that's just stupid.
Very stupid. Okay, my number one, and technically it's a three-way tie, but the bad Foster's episodes you reviewed.
Yes, good choices.
Ugh. Here's the thing. I loved Foster's growing up. It was one of my favorite shows. But if you showed someone these episodes, they'd think you're crazy for liking the show. Because the episodes were terrible. Let's start with the most infamous one, the one with Bendy. Man, Jeff Bennett, you deserve a lot better than this. Because it starts with this friend being brought to Foster's because it's implied that he was doing all these terrible things and trying to blame it on the kid, or the kid was doing it and it was blaming it on the friend. And and the parents don't question the kid, like maybe the kid was doing it. It's really hard to say, because it's like, is the friend really that bad of a friend, or did the kid do it, blame the friend, and the friend wanted revenge by causing others to be blamed for his misdeeds? You really don't know. And Frankie and Mr. Harriman are stupid in this. Because it's one thing to not believe Blue when he says he didn't do something because he's kind of a troublemaker. But Wilt? Eduardo? Coco? Come on. Ugh, this one is so frustrating, not even Lauren Faust likes this one lately.
Yep.
Okay, next is the one that I personally recommended because it was that bad. The gang goes to Europe, or tries to, anyway. Yeah, Mac wins everybody a trip to Europe, and that's really nice that he invites them to go along because, well, he's 8 and probably shouldn't go to Europe by himself. But, of course, everything that could go wrong does. Blue flip-flops on whether he wants to go or not. But Coco becomes afraid of buses and planes, even though she's part plane. Mr. Harriman, yes. Mr. Harriman is so nitpicky about his schedule that he keeps writing and rewriting with every possible little change. Frankie has to get a babysitter for Madame Foster. And there's this one friend, Eurotrish, who's obviously Eurotrash.
Yeah.
Is like wants to go, but nobody lets her until the end. But we'll get there. And by the end, they almost get ready to go, and Madame Foster gives this really awkward goodbye hug. But by the time they finally get to the airport, Mac doesn't have the tickets. They all go home and are mad at him because even though he was the one that invited them, so they should not have been upset with him. We learned that Madame Foster stole the tickets, and Eurotrish tags along with Madame Foster and her poker buddies. And when we find out that when she finally sees her former owner, the owner says, "Stop the singing! Stop the singing! Why do you think I got rid of you in the first place?" And she sadly sings, "I am going to America."
It's like,
that's terrible.
That's the thing that really like sets this episode apart. Is not only is it boring with the characters just dicking around and wasting time, the ending is just needlessly mean-spirited, both to Mac, like you said, and then that's just kind of the extra nail in the coffin. It's like, wow. It's like, I know a lot of people that thought that character was annoying, but even they thought that was like a really harsh way to end the episode off.
But the worst has yet to come, with probably Blue's crowning moment of jerkness, the one where he throws a surprise party for Mac, nearly drives him insane when he tries to stop it, makes Mac look like a jerk for supposedly destroying the party for this new adorable little friend that shows up, forces Mac to dress like a clown, and makes him look like a fool. And this is a recurring thing for Blue whenever he wants to just screw around with Mac. He'll embarrass him in some way for his birthday. This is supposed to be his best friend, and he treats him terribly.
Yeah,
what the hell?
Yeah, that was definitely like you said, crowning moment of, you said jerkness, I'd say doucheness, because
yes, that too.
Yeah, Blue is just straight up evil in this episode. He's just like, and later episodes in the show, he's just needlessly a dick just for the sake of it. And it's like, it makes you go back to the first episode where it's like, oh, they really tried their hardest to get him to stay at the house for good and make sure that, they could work out a system so that Mac could keep him. You could not possibly see why they would want to keep that going with how he, treats Mac and the others, like later on in the series. He is such an asshole. And it's like, you're like, so we're supposed to like this guy? Because we kind of don't.
I can't believe that Blue got everyone to go along with this terrible, terrible thing. Especially people with more of a moral center like Wilt or Frankie. Heck, why would even Mr. Harriman go along with this?
Yeah, because usually he doesn't even like Blue, so or his antics. It's like, why did he go along with that?
This is the one where I think, maybe Max should have abandoned Blue after this.
Yeah, right?
If you want a good party episode, go with Partying is Such Sweet Soiree.
Yes.
That one's actually fun.
That one's great.
And has a great color palette. And that's about it for me.
Any honorable mentions this time, or no?
Maybe the Ed and Nettie episodes that you looked at that were bad.
Yeah, I could see that. Those were bad.
Yeah, they're not great. They're not great, but they're not as anger-inducing as these Foster episodes.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. I got more of a personal hatred for like I only have surprise for you and stuff like that more than the Ed and Nettie ones. They're not good, but I could actually watch them and make fun of them for how much I don't like them. I don't think I can actually sit through those Foster episodes ever again. So this wraps up the 450th Media Wiz video, and I just want to thank Kat again for doing this with me. This was great.
Hey, no problem.
It felt good to sit down and reflect on the many pieces of crap, the crowning achievements of bullshit that have been through the Media Wiz history over the years. And there'll be plenty more down the line, guys. So look forward to all of that. Until then, I'm Steve, and you know how the saying goes, one art form wasn't enough.